What's the moment that made you decide being nice wasn't working anymore? I used to be the person everyone called when they needed something, the one who would drop everything to help a friend move or stay late at work to finish someone else's project. My boss would text me at 11 p.m. and I'd respond immediately. I'd cover shifts when coworkers called in sick. I'd volunteer for the projects nobody wanted. I was raised to believe kindness would always come back to you. For 5 years at Davidson Media, I was the first to arrive and last to leave. I helped my coworkers meet their deadlines. I brought coffee for the team when everyone was stressed. I even let my boss Diane take credit for my ideas during presentations because she said it would look better coming from management. When my dad got sick last year, I asked Diane if I could work remotely 2 days a week so I could drive him to chemo. She sighed and said, "We really need you in the office, but I suppose we can make it work for a month or two." I was so grateful that I worked twice as hard on my office days, making sure nothing fell through the cracks. Dad's treatment was supposed to last 6 months, but after 3 months, Diane called me into her office. She said the remote arrangement wasn't working. The team needed me physically present every day, and besides, it had been long enough. I explained that Dad was only halfway through treatment. He couldn't drive himself and had no one else. She just stared at me until I lowered my eyes and said, "I understand." I spent the next week burning through my savings to hire drivers for Dad. I was exhausted, constantly worried about him, but still the first one in the office every morning. Then came the Maxwell project, a huge account that could make or break our quarter. I spent weeks researching, building the pitch, creating mock-ups, everything. I even missed one of Dad's appointments to finish it. The day before the presentation, Diane asked to see my materials. I handed over everything, including my presentation notes. The next morning, I arrived early, excited to present my work, only to find the conference room already full. Diane was at the head of the table, showing my slides to the clients. I stood in the doorway frozen as she used my exact words. My research, my ideas. When she saw me, she smiled and said, "Oh, good. Jennifer, can you grab coffee for everyone? We're just getting started." The client turned, saw me, and said, "Aren't you presenting this?" Before I could answer, Diane jumped in and said, "Oh no, this is my project. Jennifer just helped with some research." I got the coffee. I stood in the back of the room and watched as she was praised for my work. The client loved it. They signed a 3-year contract, the biggest in company history. When the executives came down to congratulate the team, Diane accepted all the praise. She got a bonus. She got a promotion. I got a $50 gift card to Starbucks. That night, Dad called. He'd fallen trying to get from the taxi to his front door. He had been lying on the ground for 20 minutes before a neighbor found him. If I had been there, I kept thinking, if I had just been there. 2 days later, the company held a celebration for the Maxwell deal. Diane was given an award. I stood and clapped with everyone else. Then came the announcement that made everything stop. Diane would now head up a new division created specifically for the Maxwell account, and she needed a strong team. She spent 10 minutes talking about the qualities she was looking for, then announced her first hire, Ryan, the guy who had been with the company for 6 months and hadn't contributed a single thing to the project. I sat there stunned as everyone congratulated him. Then Diane looked at me and said, "Jennifer, I need those quarterly reports by end of day. I know you won't let me down." Something broke inside me. 5 years. 5 years of saying yes, of staying late, of missing time with my sick father. 5 years of watching others take credit for my work. 5 years of being nice. I stood up, walked to the bathroom, and stared at myself in the mirror. My hands were shaking. I barely recognized the woman looking back at me. That was the moment. That exact moment when I decided being nice wasn't working anymore. I walked back into that celebration with a strange calm I'd never felt before. It was like watching myself from outside my body. As I approached Diane, who was laughing with the executives about plans for the new division, without thinking, I tapped her on the shoulder and said, "I need to speak with you right now." She gave me that patronizing smile, the one that said, "Not now. Sweetie, the adults are talking." But I didn't move. I just stared at her until her smile faltered. "Fine. Jennifer, what is it?" she said with clear annoyance. "I think we should discuss this privately," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Everyone was looking at us now. She couldn't dismiss me without making a scene, so she followed me to a quiet corner. "What's so urgent that it couldn't wait?" she asked, checking her watch like my time was worthless. "I want to know why Ryan is being moved to the Maxwell team. When I created the entire presentation, the research, the pitch, everything." Diane's eyes narrowed just slightly before that fake smile returned. "Jennifer, we've discussed this. It was a team effort. And as your manager, I decided how to allocate the resources." I felt something bubbling inside me, something hot and unfamiliar anger. "I'm not talking about the presentation anymore. I'm talking about the team assignments for the account I developed. I deserve to be on that team." She laughed. Actually laughed. "Deserving has nothing to do with it. Ryan has the right presence for client-facing roles. You're more of a behind-the-scenes person, Jennifer. And that's where you excel, behind the scenes." I repeated slowly, "Do. You mean doing all the work while others take the credit?" Her face hardened. Watch your tone. This isn't productive. Let's talk when you've calmed down. I didn't realize I was raising my voice until I saw people turning to look so productive like me, staying until midnight, working on the Maxwell presentation while you were at your son's basketball game. Diane stepped closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Jennifer, I think you should take the rest of the day off clearly. You're not in a professional mindset right now. I almost did it. I almost backed down, apologized, and scurried away like I always did, but then my phone buzzed with a text from the hospital. Dad had been admitted after his fall, more serious than they initially thought possible. Internal bleeding. I looked up at Diane. I'm not taking the day off. I'm quitting. Her eyes widened. What? I quit? I'm done being your workhorse. I'm done watching you take credit for my ideas. I'm done sacrificing my family for this job where I'm not valued or respected. She switched tactics instantly, her voice softening. Jennifer, don't be hasty. You're upset. I understand, but you're a valuable member of the team. I almost laughed the first time you've ever said that to me, is when I'm quitting. People were definitely staring now. One of the executives was walking over, looking concerned. Is everything okay over here? He asked. No, it's not. I said before Diane could speak, I've just resigned because I'm tired of having my work stolen by my manager. The entire Maxwell presentation was mine. Every slide, every word, every concept. But Diane presented it as her own. The executive, Ted Wilson, looked surprised. Jennifer, these are serious accusations. They're not accusations, they're facts, I said, feeling strangely powerful. I have the original files on my personal drive with creation dates. I have emails where I sent drafts to Diane. I even have the research notes in my handwriting. Diane's face had gone pale. This is ridiculous. She's being emotional because of personal issues. Her father is sick and she's not handling the stress. Well, I felt a flash of rage at her using my father's illness against me. That was it, the final straw. I pulled out my phone, opened my email, and forwarded something to Ted's address. You'll find I just sent you the original presentation with all my notes, including the comments where Diane specifically asked me to remove my name from the presenter section. You'll also find the recording I made of our conversation last month where she told me, and I quote, just do the work and let me handle the client. I need this win for my promotion. I hadn't actually planned to send that recording. I'd made it for my own sanity to remind myself I wasn't crazy, but now it felt like divine intervention that I had it. Diane's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Ted checked his phone, his expression changing as he opened the email. Jennifer, let's discuss this in my office, he said quietly. I shook my head. I'm done discussing. I'm done working here. I'm done being nice. I have to go to the hospital. My dad needs me. I'll email HR my resignation. I turned to walk away when Ted said, wait, this is concerning information. We need to address this. I looked back at them. Diane's face was a mixture of shock and fury. Ted looked genuinely troubled. Address it however you want, I said. I won't be here. As I walked toward the exit, I heard my name being called by several people, but I didn't turn around. I just kept walking past the shocked faces of coworkers who had never seen nice, accommodating Jennifer stand up for herself outside the building. I took a deep breath. It felt like the first real breath I'd taken in 5 years. I got in my car and drove straight to the hospital. Dad was pale against the white sheets, but he smiled when he saw me. Hey, kiddo, shouldn't you be at work? I took his hand. They can manage without me. I'm where I need to be over the next few days. While Dad recovered, I got dozens of calls and texts from coworkers, some expressing shock, others support. A few even shared stories of how Diane had taken advantage of their work too. I ignored most of them, focusing on Dad and what would come next. A week later, while Dad was napping in his hospital room, I finally checked my email. There was a message from Ted Wilson asking me to call him when I had a moment. Curious, I stepped into the hallway and dialed his number. Jennifer, thank you for calling, he said, sounding genuinely relieved. I've been hoping to speak with you. What can I do for you, Ted? I asked professionally. Even though I no longer worked there after reviewing the materials you sent and conducting several interviews, we've terminated Diane's employment. Her actions constituted a clear violation of our ethics policy. I hadn't expected that. Oh, I said, not knowing what else to say. He continued. We'd like to offer you her position. I nearly dropped the phone. What? The Maxwell team needs a leader. Someone who knows the account inside and out. Someone who did the actual work. That someone is you. I leaned against the wall, trying to process this. The promotion Diane had gotten was now being offered to me. I appreciate the offer, Ted, but I'm not sure I want to come back. There was a pause. Then Ted said, we're prepared to offer a significant compensation increase, full remote work options for your family situation, and back pay for the bonus Diane received for your work. I thought about Dad, about the medical bills piling up, about the fact that despite everything I did enjoy the creative aspects, of my job, just not the way I'd been treated. What about the company culture that allowed this to happen in the first place? I asked, why didn't anyone notice or speak up before now? Ted sighed. That's a fair question, and one we're addressing company-wide. We've started a review of all management practices and reporting structures. I won't pretend we didn't fail you, Jennifer, but I'm asking for the chance to make it right. I told him I needed time to think. Would he be open to meeting in person to discuss specific terms? He agreed immediately. That night, I sat beside Dad's bed as he slept. Thinking about what to do going back seemed impossible after my dramatic exit, but starting over somewhere else during Dad's illness also seemed daunting. Dad woke up and caught me deep in thought. Penny, for your thoughts. I told him everything about Diane, about quitting, about the job offer. He listened carefully, as he always did when I finished. He asked me, "What do you want to do, sweetie?" "I don't know." Admitted, part of me wants to go back and show them I can lead without becoming like Diane. Part of me wants to walk away and start fresh. He nodded, both valid. But let me ask you this. When did you feel most like yourself this past week? I thought about it when I finally stood up to Diane, when I stopped being a doormat. Exactly. He said, you don't have to decide whether to take the job right now. But whatever you choose, don't go back to being the old Jennifer, the one who let people walk all over her. I met with Ted the next day and laid out my conditions: full remote work flexibility during Dad's treatment, a team of my choosing, and most importantly, a company-wide attribution policy, ensuring people received credit for their work. To my surprise, he agreed to everything. I started my new role the following month, working primarily from Dad's house. While he recovered, the team respected me because I respected them. We completed the first phase of the Maxwell project ahead of schedule and under budget. It wasn't always smooth sailing. Some people who had known the old Jennifer tried to take advantage, assuming I'd still be a pushover. They learned quickly that while I was fair, I was no longer a doormat. 6 months later, Dad finished his treatment. The doctors were cautiously optimistic he was on the mend. I had proven myself as a leader and even received a company-wide innovation award for a new campaign approach. One evening, as I was finishing work, Dad came into the home office I'd set up in his spare room. "You know what I was thinking about today?" "What's that?" I asked. "Closing my laptop that day at the hospital when you came in after quitting, there was something different about you. Like a weight had been lifted." I smiled. "I remember he sat down across from me before that day. I was worried about you more than myself, worried you were letting life happen to you instead of making choices. It took me getting sick for you to finally put yourself first." Tears pricked my eyes. "I'm sorry it took that long." He reached over and squeezed my hand. "Don't be. We all learn our lessons when we're ready to learn them. I'm just glad you learned this one, while I'm still around to see it." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment before he added, "Your mother would be proud of you. She never took crap from anyone either." That made me laugh. Mom certainly wasn't a pushover. Late that night, I found myself thinking about the person I used to be, always saying yes, always accommodating everyone else's needs before my own. I didn't hate that person. She was kind and well-intentioned, but she was also afraid of conflict, afraid of disapproval, afraid of standing alone. The woman I'd become wasn't fearless, but she faced her fears. She set boundaries. She demanded respect, and strangely enough, she received it far more often than the woman who had begged for it. The following week, I received an email from Ryan. Of all people, he'd been reassigned after I took over, and was now working under another manager who apparently made Diane look positively angelic in comparison. The email was asking if I had any openings on my team. He'd heard I was a fair boss who gave credit where it was due. I stared at the email for a long time, thinking about how desperate I had been for recognition, how I would have jumped at any chance to work for someone who valued me. Part of me wanted to ignore the email to let him feel what I had felt, but that wasn't who I wanted to be either. Nice didn't mean being a pushover, but it also didn't mean being vindictive. I replied, offering him an interview, not promising anything, but giving him the chance I wished someone had given me. Dad saw the email over my shoulder as he brought me coffee. "You're a better person than I am." He chuckled. I'd have told him to kick rocks. I laughed. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. But I know I can be kind without being a doormat. Now I decide where my boundaries are. Not everyone else exactly. He said, raising his coffee mug in a toast to boundaries. "And the daughter who finally found hers?" I clinked my mug against his. "To boundaries," I echoed, and to not confusing kindness with weakness. It had been a long journey from the woman crying in the bathroom mirror to the leader sitting confidently in her home office, but I wouldn't trade it for anything, not even for the comfortable invisibility of always being nice. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to stop being so nice to everyone else. It doesn't mean becoming cruel. It just means making room for your own needs alongside others. And that moment in the bathroom when I decided being nice wasn't working anymore, it wasn't the end of kindness. It was the beginning of self-respect. And remarkably, those two things could exist side by side if you were brave enough to make space for both. 2 years later, I'm still at Davidson Media now. As a director, I've built a team that's known for both excellence and ethics. We credit each contributor by name on every project, large or small, we've become. The division everyone wants to work for Dad's cancer is in remission. He's taken up golf and complains constantly about his swing. He comes to the office holiday party each year and tells embarrassing stories about me last month. Diane applied for a position in my department. She didn't recognize my married name on the job posting when she walked in for the interview and saw me. Her face went through about 5 emotions. In 3 seconds, I conducted the interview professionally, asked relevant questions, and thanked her for her time. I didn't hire her, not out of revenge, but because there were better candidates, people who valued collaboration and integrity as she was leaving. She paused at the door. You've changed, Jennifer. I smiled. Yes, I have. Thank you for noticing. She looked confused. You're thanking me? In a way, yes. If you hadn't pushed me to my breaking point, I might never have found my strength. So in a strange way, you helped me become who I needed to be. She didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded and left. That night, I told Dad about the interview. He roared with laughter, slapping his knee. The look on her face must have been priceless. It was, I admitted. But you know what's funny? I actually meant what I said to her. I am grateful in a weird way. He nodded sagely. Sometimes our worst moments lead to our best decisions. I think about that bathroom mirror moment, often the tear-streaked face, the shaking hands, the absolute certainty that something had to change. It was rock bottom, but it was also the foundation I built everything else on. So when people ask me the moment I decided being nice wasn't working anymore, I tell them it wasn't about stopping being nice. It was about starting to be nice to myself too, and that has made all the difference.